My senior year at Texas was plagued with injuries. In fact, I made the Jamaican World Championship team my junior year, my third year of college. And
bro, she's a big deal. Like, who is doing that?
And I went to Jamaican trials and I placed second.
Yeah.
The top 3 makes the team. I placed second, ran a personal best to get on the team. And my trainer says to me, Danielle, I had really bad shin splints.
Oh.
And she said, Danielle, you can't go. Like, if you go to the World Championships, you won't be able to walk in September. And I was like, I made the World Championship.
Right.
I'm going. Thank you very much. And so I go to the World Championship, and I didn't perform as well as I wanted, which at the time had nothing to do with the shin splints. I just,
But you were in the final?
No. I wasn't
in
the
the
final. No.
Okay.
I actually didn't advance from the first round.
Okay.
And so my experience was short there, but when I came back to Texas, so said, so done. I could not walk.
Oh, no.
I was actually in pain. I wasn't able to train on land for about 3 months. I was in the pool just doing underwater workouts. And this was my final year of college. So final year, everybody wants to go hard for their final year so they can, get a contract and leave. And I was in the pool running every day. And there was Alan, I'm not remembering his last name, but Alan was in charge of the men's athletics training department. And he was a dry needling specialist. And, he one day, which was funny too, because he's kind of like this miserable old white man that people are like, oh, he doesn't like any of the black athletes. And then one day I'm sitting there talking to my trainer, who is head of the women's side now. And she's like, well, she's looking at my shins and she's like, Alan just treated one of the cross-country guys, but he has an acute. And Alan's like now fascinated. He's like looking at my shins, like I'm in pain. He's fascinated. He's like, he's never treated anyone with this severe of a condition. And he's like, it's gonna be painful, but he's up for the challenge. And I'm like, I just want to be able to run. So if it means tolerating some pain. And so every single day, I think even twice a day, I go in to meet with him and he's needling my shins, just dry needling, which is like acupuncture, but you're moving the needle. So he's poking at the trigger points, the muscle knots in my shins. And sometimes it sends this electrifying sensation when the trigger points are released. So like I'm in pain, I'm like gripping on the training bed every day. It's just like, and he's like, relax. Like it's pretty intense. And that was my life for 3 months every day. Just after about a month of treatment, I was able to walk without pain. And then within like another 2 months, I was able to now probably be able to light jogging. I wasn't allowed to work out on the surface as yet, but it took a full 3 months for me to even be able to get back on land. And I started training. When I did get out of the pool, I was so grateful. Every time I saw him, I was just like, I was able to walk. So my senior year was just me just being very determined and persistent. It took a lot of grit. I just had to do my best under the circumstances, and I didn't get a lot of speed working because I was slow to getting that, but I was very strong because when you're training in the pool,
The resistance.
yeah, you get very strong. So I was not as fast as my normal self, but I was far stronger. So I was able to run some pretty good times, just off being stronger and running a more even race. And so when I left Texas that year, actually my senior year was the only year that I didn't make nationals. So I made it every year from a freshman, and my senior year was the first time I didn't make the finals. And so I left, and I decided that I was going to go back to my old coach, because by this time we had a new coach, and we weren't getting along. And so I went back to my old coach, who was now in California. So I packed up my stuff and I moved to California in San Diego. And when I got to San Diego, it was a lot. I was working and training because I didn't have a track contract. So I had an agent, but I didn't have a contract. And I would just kind of work and go to practice. But it was really difficult. And then again, my coaches and I weren't really, it wasn't really working out. And so I had some issues where I was like, I think I'm gonna have to go, and so I went to South Carolina. I went to,
So you went from the East Coast to the West Coast, back to the East.
Yes.
Well, from the South, I should say, to the West Coast.
I made a quick stop in Oklahoma.
Okay. You're in the Midwest too.
Yes.
Wow.
That quickly didn't work out. That was like a leave now immediately. So I was speaking to my agent at the time, and he was like, what do you want to do? He was looking for other camps in the US for me to go to. I was like, I didn't really want to go to another camp in the US. Like, I preferred at the time the Jamaican coaches, and I said it didn't make sense for me because my heart wanted to work with the Francis brothers at MVP. Like, I was like, I just really believe in their program, and I was like, it doesn't make sense. I keep moving around in the US knowing that's where I want to go, and things are not working out. So I think if I'm gonna spend all this money moving, might as well just go where I want to go.
Yeah.
If I have one big move left in me, let me go and use that one big move where I really believe in that program.
Yeah.
And so I did, and I reached out to the president of MVP at the time through a friend. I was like, can you call him for me, please? And they were like, yeah. And so I show up, I go. And I remember my first time speaking to Mr. Francis, and after a couple of days of training, I meet with Mr. Francis, that's Mr. Stephen Francis, and I was like, and he's like, well, Miss Dowie, when you first came here, I didn't want you here.
Oh my gosh.
Instant tears, like I was just like crying, and he was like, but, and he told me why. He thought that when I left high school, my coaches were not aware that I was leaving, but that's my high school coach to blame for that. But yeah, so.
But that got cleared up. That wasn't the case.
No, it wasn't the case. But I could see how the stance he took. If I had actually done that, that would have been disrespectful. Like if I were to go to school for 3 years and just leave and my high school coach not know about it. But yeah, I could see how disrespectful that would be. But that definitely not the case. He definitely knew about it, refused to speak to my coaches at Texas. And obviously within communication kind of ended up sharing that I didn't tell him, which wasn't true. So my trap mom, Mrs. Carr, was like, "No, I'll go speak to Mr. Francis myself. This needs to be set straight." And she didn't take it lightly. And but my experience at MVP was fun.
Wait, sorry, quick question. So you missed Shelly when you were at Wilmer's, but was she there at MVP at that time?
Yes, she was at MVP, UTech, when I started Wilmer's. And so we didn't overlap.
Yes, people be Shelly and Chris.
Yeah. if I had attended Wilmer's from first form, we would have overlapped, but I did not. I came there at fourth form. So Shelly was already attending UTech at the time, but she would come back quite often. And so, and plus MVP is like, heavily Wilmerian, so arms wide open, and so that experience was really, really, it was really fun, and it also was sad because I kept getting injured, ever since my senior year of college. Like I would constantly, it's like my body kept becoming more and more sensitive to everything. And so each year I would just get re-injured at some point in the season. And really I would say like I kept it together. I was always super optimistic, patient, and just, willing to try whatever it is. The next thing, like, okay, I've tried this, let's try this. So it's always thinking like that. And I remember my actual, my last year running track, I decided to try a different club. I went to a different club by UE, Sweat Track Club, and I tried, their program there. And I was doing a lot more longer runs, like 800 type runs, and because my body couldn't handle the high sprint program, and I would still get re-injured and still feel lots of pain. And so that was where I started to like kind of contemplate, like, okay, maybe I need to wrap it up. And and I remember I showed up to the track one morning to do my workout, and the rule is like, if you're feeling pain, just go slower. And I was feeling pain. I was in so much pain that when I went slower, there was no slower to go. I was just like walking, and I remember like bursting into tears on the track, like thinking, all right, this is it, and that was when I decided like I was just gonna just call it a day. And so it ended not by choice, really. It was more like, okay, your body's
like, I can't.
Yeah. I stopped in, I think it's 2018.
Okay. So can I ask a question? I don't know if this is hard for you, but like, what does it feel like, what you're like, your whole life's been gearing up for this thing, and then you just like physically can't do it anymore? Like, how do you process that? Like, what's that like?
Well, it was extremely devastating for me. I was a little Miss Trackhead. I when they say to not put your eggs in all one basket, I proudly put all my eggs in my track and field basket. And I really, it was emotional. It was like the love of my life broke up with me. It was my sport that I enjoy so much and was obsessed with. So once there's obsession, there's this unhealthy attachment to this sport. And so I was obsessed. I felt obsessed. And when it shattered, it was like something that I've invested a lot into, and I wasn't ready to have it. I wasn't ready to leave. I wasn't wanting to leave like this, and so it was painful for me. And I had to mourn it, like how you mourn someone's passing, and So it was definitely tough. I will admit that, because you have your Olympic dreams, you have these world championship dreams, you have dreams of, doing crazy stuff that athletes who, know what they can do dream of. And when it doesn't materialize, that's heartbreaking. But I've learned since that, you're more than what you do, and that even if you give it 100 in something and it doesn't work out, life goes on. And you always are able to learn from what you did.
Yeah.
And so I would never go back and say, I would do something else, because it won't work out in the end. I would still do it all over again. So I wouldn't redo. I just appreciate the process, appreciate my story, my journey, and make the best of it.
Yeah.
And tell it like how I want to tell it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
So speaking of storytelling, when did you start writing? When did you decide that you were gonna start your publishing company?
Well, so I throughout my college experience, I was blogging. I had a blog on WordPress, Hurdle Over Everything, because your girl was a hurdler, and life has its obstacles. So I thought, hurdle over everything, because there's always an obstacle in the way, and we must get over it. And and I used to write my blog, and when I was in high school at Titchfield, I had a poetry book and a song book that I would write songs and poetry in. And I lost that book. And when I got to college and I started blogging again, people were like, oh my God, you write so well, you tell a story so well. And I was like, remembering my poetry book, and I'm like, oh, my long lost love, writing. And so from as a child, I knew that I wanted to write a book. And I think as I got older, I was like pretty confident that at least a memoir or an autobiography, something was gonna come from me. And then when I, leading into the COVID year, my cousin wrote a children's book, and she was like, can you help me publish your book, my book? And Little Miss research everything, right? I love just get me fascinated on one topic, and I'll go find out all there is to find out about it. And so I did research the process, just to help her. And then when I did all this extensive research and I found out more than I needed to know, I was like, ooh, I could start here. I could do a children's book, get my feet wet, learn, get my craft of writing up, and continue to publish. And so that's what I did. And my mom wrote a lot of stories as well. And so I was like, I would be like, oh, Mommy, how's this? How does this sound? And when I was in high school, I used to love creative writing. Just give me a prompt. I was like, ready. And so I was like, okay, this could be getting my feet wet. And so it started in the COVID year when I wrote the Wagwan Jimmy series. That's the first book I published. And really, that was, a part of me had this little activism spirit. And I learned at the time that the Jamaican language that we were taught that is just a dialect, it's not a real language, Patois is just broken English. I'm learning that, no, hold up, wait a minute, Patois is a language.
It has structure, there's grammar.
Yes, it has syntax, all of the ingredients that we were told that it didn't have. And the thing is, it had those ingredients while they were telling us it didn't have it, and they knew it had it. And the language unit has been at UA for years, from the 1950s, and I'm like, what's going on? So I was like, I'm just learning about this at 20 enough. And I was like, I don't want the kids to come up thinking that their language, a part of them, which there's always this debate that Jamaican is inferior to English, and that you don't if you speak patois. And in the classroom environment, yes, there's importance in learning how to speak English,
Right.
but the way in which a lot of students who are primarily speakers of Jamaican language are shamed if are made fun of if they can't code switch,
Right.
or justifiably speak some
Standard English.
some standard English. And so I was like, oh no, this is nice. So let me write this bilingual book. And I did it bilingual, so people could see the difference children could see the difference between English and Jamaican, because a lot of people who struggle, there just simply isn't enough English being spoken in their household.
Yes.
For me, I didn't have that problem. I came to Jamaica with a British accent. I learned to speak over there. And then my sisters got me speaking patois very early. But I never had any problems, in school.
Your mother was also an English teacher.
My mother is an
going to
English
enforce
teacher.
Your English as well. So.
Exactly. So I'm speaking to my mother, and I would have to answer like how I'm gonna, I have to represent well.
Right.
I'm like, one of the captains of the quiz team. Like I have to speak. I would read. I read a lot, by the way. So in any grade, in any level, if they're like, can we get some volunteer to read? Danielle, I'm the volunteer. I'll read.
Yeah.
And so even when I was in church, I remember one time everybody it was children's youth service, and everybody was like reading some part of a story, and all the kids were reading, and when it was my turn, you just heard this strong, loud voice, and my cousins were like, yeah, when it was your turn, you didn't sound like a little girl, you were powerful. And so I always had that experience.
Yeah. So you are doing publishing and writing now. That's your main thing. But you're also a commentator. Like you commentate on athletics.
Yes. So when I stopped running, right, the people in the track world, they didn't give me any time to grieve. They were like, oh, Dowie, come, you can speak properly, come, you look nice, come on TV, grab a mic, talk about track. And I was like, well, this is a way to keep close to what I love. And I love it. Getting better each time that I, do my analysis. So I do sports analysis, which is a little different than a commentator.
Yes, I apologize. That's harder.
Wait. You don't have
We're
to
not going to
apologize.
ruffle anybody's feathers, but let's be real.
I'm learning.
Analysis takes more research. That's not, both of them do. So being a commentator, you have to know.
Definitely.
But
it's a lot of work.
It is different.
It is a lot of work. It's different.
Yeah.
The commentators bring a lot more of the excitement.
Right.
But I would say that I've been trying my hand at both. So thanks to my co-hosts, right? So every now and then they would step back and let me call a race, and I would get my feet wet. And I like it. I like doing both. And so it's nice.
That's really fun.
So I do broadcast analysis, and I do write children's book. Now I'm stepping up in grade, right? I'm working on a middle grade nonfiction book at the moment, and other projects that are not yet complete. I have a long list of projects that are not yet complete, but definitely. So, and I did a bit of teaching as well. So I've always wanted to be a teacher. My mom was a teacher, but she was one of those teachers that be like, don't be a teacher, don't join this profession. But I've always had wonderful teachers, and my teachers have shaped who I am. And I just, when I hear people talk about having a teacher that told them this and a teacher that was bad, we can't find one teacher in my experience that I could say that teacher was, even when I had teachers who were new, like at Wilma's, my math teacher just came from college, and he wasn't, he was very knowledgeable, but he didn't master the delivery yet. And, you know, we were so patient. He was so patient with us. We were like, you know, CSEC is in a couple months. Just do your best. Like, and it was a slow process for us, math, and we just worked with him, and we got it. We got it enough to get that exam nailed. But overall, I loved my teachers. Like, I'm a teacher's pet.
Yes.
And a troublemaker.
At the same time. That's so funny. All right, so we're going to wrap up soon, but I had one last question about another role that you had when you came back to Jamaica, which was a primary caregiver. Your mother was ill, and you also were a primary caregiver to her. Anything you want to talk about with that, you can talk about. I won't go any further.
Okay, so when during that same COVID year, I would, you know, I speak to my mom every day, you know, and, you know, at one point she started telling me that, you know, she feels tired a lot, and she was, had to breathe, and the doctor prescribed an asthma pump. So it's like, oh, I got one too, and whatever. And because of COVID, I moved back home. I was in Kingston, and I was like, let me go home for a while, and until this COVID thing gets sorted out. And when I go home, I learned that my mom's like a lot more ill than she let on over the phone. And so I was like, yeah, we're not gonna do a GP, you're going to a specialist. So I take her to a specialist in Kingston, and the specialist like, oh, we have to do another additional test at UE. And my mom didn't want to go. She's like, oh, COVID, she don't want to catch COVID. And I was like thinking like, oh, okay, that's a legit response. Right. But then she starts to look, she starts to look sick, like more sick each day. And then she goes into Port Antonio, she faints, didn't tell me. So I come home, I was like, Mom, what's going on? And she's like, oh, she fainted yesterday. I was like, what? What do you mean yesterday? And I don't know about it, and it's today. And so I started looking at her now, and I'm realizing that I just have to just do things now, because I wasn't happy with.
You have to be the parent.
Yes. Yeah. So I'm becoming the parent now. So I'm like, okay. I call back Dr. Scott. I'm like, Scott's office. I'm like, can I get back the appointment? Because I made an appointment for her to see the pulmonologist, and she was like, no, she's not going. And I called him back, and I'm like, can I get back my appointment? And I barely got it back, and I explained to her like, look, we're coming from Portland. It's not good. We need to get this appointment. She's like, all right, just come early, and we'll squeeze you in. So I did that. At the time I wasn't driving, so my mom's friend came, and she wasn't able to even walk in the car, and so it was just tears already because I'm a crybaby, and I was just like very emotional that my mom couldn't walk. We stopped in the St. Mary Junction because she needed to use the bathroom, and I couldn't lift her up. I was in the bathroom with her, and when she was finished using the toilet, like I couldn't assist her, so I just like burst out into tears. And I remember when I got out the gas station, I'm like struggling, and I'm thinking all these years of lifting weights, and my mom is sick, and I can't manage. And some guys were in a truck pulling into the gas station, and they were looking at me, and they're like, you have to hold it for mommy, you have to be strong. And my mom was straight faced, like nothing at all, no emotion. She's just like, and I'm just like, water. And the guys in the truck were like so encouraging, like the whole gas station was like, come on. And it was like me just trying to make it to the car. So I finally get to the car, get into Kingston, and the doctor is like, it's bad, like you need to do an MRI. He was like, can you afford an MRI? He's like, if you can't, you can do an x-ray, but an MRI is what you need. And I was like, at the time things were tight, like I think he was like, the MRI was like 55,000. I looked at my account and it was like 60,000. I was like, yeah, I can afford it. I do the MRI, we're waiting for the results, and it took a while, and the people at the office were like kind of like wanting to be, iffy about whether they give me the results, and I'm like, give me the results, So I get the results, I'm looking at it, and I see the word metastasis, and I'm like, I already know what that means. Like, I'm a student of science, bio. So I was like, and I'm like in denial still because I see metastasis, but I've never really had that experience with cancer to know what. I know that it means third, fourth stage. I'm aware of that, but as in all, I just didn't think she would pass. Like, I was super in denial, and I was just like, my mom would be the exception, and like, she would be the one person that will survive. So I was not thinking. I just went into, okay, all right, what does she need to eat? Like, all of this, I'm trying to fix everything.
Yeah.
And so the doctor is like, we went to UE immediately. And so it started going, so right then and there, he informed us that she would have died that day if she hadn't gone to UE, because she had fluid in her lungs, which was why she couldn't breathe. And so they drained off the fluid at UE, and it was kind of just, I would say, downhill from there. From that point was maybe end of October, and she died in January. But what that offered us was that we were able to really spend time with her and come to terms with the terminal illness. And I think she was very happy to see that, she was receiving the best care that we could offer. And she had time to just reflect on stuff. And I was still little miss clueless, because I think it's silly now. I really just didn't think that she would pass. And so I would go to the hospitals, and the doctors would be really mean. And I was like, why are they being so mean? And, when I would be like, what's up? And my mom would be like, talk to the doctor. And the doctors wouldn't want to say anything to me. And then when we transferred to Port Antonio, and we went to Port Antonio Hospital, and the doctor there was also very dry, and they didn't want to do any further treatment. So I'm just like, in the back of my mind, I'm like, is my mom telling them
don't treat me?
Yeah, I'm like trying to figure out what's going on, because I'm like,
why would they not?
Yeah. So I'm just like willing to pay for the process, which is free because it's like public hospital, and they're like, not wanting to. And so I was like, so I say to my mom, did you know that you had cancer? And she was like, no. And she she did it with a straight face. I didn't believe her 100% of the time, because I was like, it's when she did the biopsy, she told us it was negative. So I never thought anything about it. But she had the biopsy reopened into a wound, which wouldn't heal. So I knew that was either diabetes or cancer. So I was like, I wanted it to be diabetes. So I was like, oh, maybe it's diabetes, because she said no. And so I was truly, when I reflect, I was truly in denial. And I think the turning point was when, one day her oxygen levels got really low, and I rushed her back to the hospital after taking her home, because eventually she said she wanted to go home, and I just took her home. I got these oxygen tanks and everything that she needed to be home. And when she came home and I rushed her back to the hospital, the nurse, one of the doctors saw me, and she was like, yeah, I think you need to take your mom to a hospice. And I was like, the word hospice, I was like, oh, it's not what I said. And she's like, and so then I started to get the picture, so that's the first time I actually accepted because the doctors were hoping I would just go away, instead of just telling me straight up.
Yeah, they wouldn't tell you straight.
Yeah, and so when she said hospice, I was like, I called my sister and I told her, she's like, hey girl, stop ball, because like I said, she knew That was my sister's response when I told her what the doctor said. She's like, "Hey, girl, stop ball," because she knew.
Yeah.
Which I should say, my older sister who lives in England, she was like, "Don't cry," because she left Jamaica when I was 7, so she doesn't know that I'm a proper crybaby. My other sister,
She knows.
she knows I'm
She
a
knows you
crybaby.
need to firm because
Yeah.
she's gonna cry.
And my mom. So my mom wouldn't take me. I literally sometimes cry for everything. And so when I told my 2 sisters what the doctor said, my oldest sister's like, "Oh, don't let your mom see you crying. Because she's a nurse. So she's like, it helps when you be strong." And I'm looking at her like, it's way too late for that.
Right.
I was crying before I even knew it was cancer.
Right.
And then my other sister was just like, "Hey, girl, stop ball."
Oh my God.
Because she knows that I was crying. I started laughing with tears in my eyes because I'm like, the difference with leaving somebody
Yeah.
and leaving them as a child. Okay. But then, so my mom eventually passed, and of course that, I was plunged into mourning, and it was sort of relief as well because I was as skinny as she was when she passed because I couldn't eat. I was feeding her every day in the hospital. They would allow me to feed her because she wouldn't eat, and I eventually stopped eating too, and I didn't even realize it. I remember one day I was looking at her and I was like, "Mom, your legs are so skinny," and I hold up my leg next to it and I couldn't tell the difference. So I lost a lot of weight. When she passed, I was like clinically underweight, and I actually had to do surgery right after. So I buried my mom the end of January, and then 2 weeks later I go to my gynecologist downstairs. And she was like, "Oh, there's a lump in your breast." And I was like, "Are you joking?" And she's like, "No." And I was like, "Dr. Buchanan, this is not funny." And she's like, "Danielle, there's a lump in your breast." And so she's like, "You have to remove it." And so everybody was like, "Oh, just cut off your breast from now. Did your mom had cancer?" And I was like, "Yeah, this is going to be tough." And then, so I was getting advice from everybody. The doctor was like, "You could think about it, whether you want to remove it or leave it in, but I advise you to take it out." And so I took about 3 months to make a decision, and then I did the surgery, so in May, my birthday, 2 days after my birthday, I did the surgery. And so here I am, still publishing books.
People, this lady is a lot is okay. And you published your first book in that year.
I did. No,
was it before your surgery or after your surgery?
It was before my surgery. It was
after your mom passed.
It was a month before my surgery. Wow. So I published the book in April. That's Wagon Jimmy, and then did the surgery a month later, and then so a lot.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. There is no gentle way to kind of leave that because that's a lot, but let's talk about tips. Okay.
Tips.
Let's close off. Tips for persons who find themselves as primary caregivers of loved ones. Any tips for them? Tell them to the camera.
Oh wow. I would say, be gentle. Be gentle, be kind, and it is such a sensitive time, especially if they are terminally ill. I would just encourage patience and good communication, because my mom at one point was unable to speak, and I would look at her and I was like, "Mom, is this okay?" I would get her feedback. I would ask her permission for stuff still. When people come to visit, I was like, "So-and-so is inside. Is it okay if they see you like this? Are you okay with that?" And she'd be like, "Yeah, it's fine." And so I didn't rob them of their agency. I didn't don't rob people of their agency. Respect them all the way. Even if they may not have physical autonomy, you still want to treat them with dignity and don't take anything for granted. And I did that all the way from my mom, of course. And I would also say, remember yourself, because being a caregiver, it takes its toll. And if you're not mindful, you will drain yourself to the detriment of your own health. So ensure that if you can share the workload, or I don't want to say burden, right? But if you can share the caregiving with someone, do share it, because it requires a lot, and don't be afraid to ask for help. There were people that I didn't like, that I didn't want around my mom. They weren't friends with us, and but I was in need, and people were like, I want to do this, can I help with this? And I was just like, yeah, please help. So accept the help. If there's ever a time to forgive people and accept help, it's then.
All right, that's so real. And then 2 more questions. Advice for athletes whose bodies don't allow them to do what they want to do anymore.
Well, there's always a saying to trust your body, and I believe in that. And I sometimes wonder if I had, every time I wonder if I had stayed in the game and somehow we continued, if my body is like, nope, I wouldn't, because I am still in pain. I still feel pain when I work out, even leisurely. And so I think listening to your body and trusting yourself, the sooner you trust yourself as an athlete, the better your chances will be of succeeding in your sport. I think one of the things when I reflect, I ran a lot of the times with questions in my mind of whether or not I'm doing this thing right, which in hindsight translates to not trusting myself enough. So I'm encouraging athletes to trust themselves, because that lack of trust manifests in your muscles as tension and all sorts of problems that can lead to injuries. So the sooner you're able to fix the mental, trust yourself, be confident, and learn your body, learn what feels good, understand that I used to believe that there was just one button and that's hard, go hard every time. Learn that it's a cycle, that there's a time to go hard, there's a time to go 50%, and there's a time to go 30. Well, 30 is too slow, but yes. But there's a time for everything. So be patient and don't be afraid of slowing down, because sometimes you need to slow down in order to get there faster.
All right, fair. And the last one, I want you to look at the camera and tell them 3 tips for repatriation. If you want to come home, what can you do to prepare?
Wow. I don't think I will say I was actually working on a list of Jamaican proverbs, and one of them was save money and money will save you. So I would say that as my first tip. One of the things that I made sure that I did, even though it ran out very quickly, was save as much money as I could when I was in the States. Of course, a lot of Caribbean people go to America and the UK and Europe to earn a better living. So while you're there and you're unsure about where you're going to end up, what your status is going to be, just save as much money as you can. The fashion and the fun, it's not going to go anywhere. You can always have that, but save your money, because money is a great tool, can help you do a lot of things. And in terms of what to do when you come back home, I think your country better than you. And I think that was one of my strengths here. When I was coming back here, even though I was coming back primarily to run track and field, I knew that I would be okay. I'm coming home. I have my connections here. Like if I wanted to teach for 2 years, and there were multiple schools, offered me a job to come and teach. So there are options once you know your your field, your network of people. And so don't be afraid to come home. That's another one. I think a lot of people make out where we're from to be just horrible. Even if you had a tough upbringing, it doesn't mean that if you come home, you're going back into that situation. You're more independent. You can move. You don't have to go back to where your family is. You can go to a different parish. You can go to a different city. We have 2.5 now. So yes, Fort Morris the half. But yeah, and let me think
You don't
about
have to
any
have
other.
any more.
Okay,
That's
okay.
it. That's it.
Okay.
So thank
Yes.
you so much. Those are excellent tips. Thank you for sharing. You really shared a lot about your personal and mental process with us, with grace and with genuine offer to help people with your advice. So we want to thank Danielle for her time today. I want to thank you for watching. I want to thank you in advance for subscribing. If you haven't already, I want to thank you for sharing this with anybody who you think this could really help. And I will see you next time on Repat Stories.
I wanted to know why you started the Repat Stories. I think that's a very interesting line of questioning or niche. I don't want to say niche, but I think it's an interesting angle to want to look at, and I just want to know why. Where did that come from?
Honestly, I don't know. Maybe when I was studying for my PhD and I was daydreaming of the days when I won't be doing academic work. Maybe in 2019, it was before the pandemic, or maybe around that time, I used to think about coming home. I always wanted to come home. I grew up in Jamaica, went to undergraduate here, and went to graduate school abroad for my master's and my PhD. And I just was like, what really makes people come home? It gets easier when you're abroad, especially if you're just talking about money, like you make more money. It's easier in that sense, but the sense of community is different. It's not like home. The food is not like home. Your family is not there, but it's different for everybody. For some people, those things don't matter as much as the money or the opportunities that you can get in your career. So I was genuinely just curious for what makes people really make that decision to pick up and leave after having a choice to stay where they are, or to find a mechanism to stay where they are, especially when it would be easier to stay. So that's literally it. I just want to talk to as many people as possible from all over the world about why it was important, especially in the Caribbean, where we have the highest rate of immigration outside of the region, like in the whole world. The Caribbean has the highest rate. I was just curious about why people choose to come back. So yeah.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Actually, I'm thinking it would have been nice to know that before. I'm joking. But obviously, I did watch your videos, and so I kind of had the gist. But I really wanted to just know why. It's just so interesting to me.
Yeah.
And I've just never seen anybody talk about repatriation like that. And so I was like, this is a pretty cool podcast.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yes.
Okay, I got Danielle's role, guys, so you guys need to watch it and share it.
Yes.
All right, thanks again.
Thank you as well.